From where you sit, things are working. Your business moves, your decisions get made, and your model holds. And you define that as success. And on the surface, nothing is pushing back. But your success isn't only defined from the inside. It's shaped by how people respond to you, adjust around you, and decide what actually runs for you and what doesn't. And that's the part most people never stop to examine. Because while everything can look fine from where you sit, the way your success is being experienced around you can start redirecting it long before anything breaks loudly enough to get your attention. I spent 23 consecutive years as a top-performing wealth advisor, leader, and executive, building and running multi-billion-dollar businesses. What I'm going to discuss with you today is something that most leaders never stop to examine while things still look like they're working. 1, how your presence can quietly train people not to engage with you. 2, why taking on more can weaken your authority instead of strengthening it. 3, how insufficient depth will cause ownership to shift away from you. And finally, 4, why your authority and your influence will erode long before your results ever do. Once success settles in, it starts showing up in 3 places. How you show up, which is your presence, your process, and how direction actually forms around you. Then it's how your scarcity starts to form. What gets priority, what gets urgency, and how others begin responding to that. And then there's your depth. Who actually understand the work well enough to carry it and shape the outcomes. I'm going to walk with you through each one so you can see how people are actually experiencing you and how that experience can limit your success long before you see it coming. Let's start with your presence. Here's where this starts, and most people don't notice it while it's happening. Success changes you before you realize it, and the people around you adjust to that change faster than you ever think. And from your side, it feels like you're just being consistent because you're doing what always worked for you. But from their side, it starts to feel predictable. They'll already know where you're going to land because they already know what you're going to agree to. They'll know what you're going to push on, and they know what will make it through. They'll listen to you, but they don't challenge your direction or test any alternatives. They'll never bring anything that might change the outcome because they don't expect the outcome with you to change. So they just keep things moving, but your team's thinking doesn't. And by the time you're ever involved in something that actually matters, the path is already chosen. You're brought in to approve what they already know you'll agree to, not to shape the thinking with them. So let's move on to scarcity. You built your success by taking things on quickly. And over time, that trained you to believe that momentum equals your safety. Because when things are moving fast, everything feels under your control. But when things start to slow down, for you, it starts to feel like your success could actually slip. So when things come down from above, you don't hesitate. Any type of initiatives, campaigns, any new ask. But what you don't see is where the weight actually lands. You will take that initiative, but your team has to carry the load. And this is where it usually goes. A metric push lands and their attention will shift. A retention priority hits and their capacity gets redirected. Even a new referral campaign that shows up, and that causes everything else to slow down, even though the core business still has more to move. But nothing gets questioned. And before long, that movement replaces progress. The work starts spreading sideways instead of going forward. Their capacity, it tightens. Their outcomes level out, not because your team isn't capable, but because effort is being divided across things that aren't equal. And from your team's perspective, this stops feeling like direction and starts feeling like constant reaction. And there are so many asks, so many shifts, and so little separation between them that it begins to feel like you don't really get their work or what their business actually needs to win. Because from you, everything to them sounds urgent. Nothing sounds deliberate. So they stop assuming your priorities reflect understanding, and they start treating them like your instructions to execute. And at that point, you're no longer seen as the person shaping the business. You're seen as the person passing pressure through. And once that sets in, they don't bring you perspective anymore. They just bring you updates. This doesn't stop with just your team. Even your partners are experiencing the same signal, not all at once, but over time. As requests come from you more frequently, with less context and less distinction between what truly matters and what simply is the next push. Because to them, everything starts sounding important. Everything starts feeling urgent. So they stay responsive, they stay polite, and they'll say yes. But the relation with you loses contrast. And when you actually need partners to show up differently with judgment, priority, and an extra lift, there's nothing left to pull against because every ask has already sounded the same. And then there's your depth. Here's where this really starts to show. As a leader, you're always involved. You stay in the loop, nothing looks broken. But the role you play in the work has changed. The issues, they'll still come to you, but solving them now depends on someone else stepping in behind you. And across your team, people start to adjust. They don't wait for you to shape the solution. They'll move ahead and loop you in once a direction is already forming. And on things you should have a foundational grasp of, the work doesn't get directed anymore. it gets redirected. Someone else frames it. Someone else defines the path. Someone else carries the judgment. You're included, but no longer central. You'll see emails showing up, the solution already in motion, meetings happening where the real direction was set long before you entered the room. And no one's hiding anything from you. They're just not expecting you to figure it out. And then a judgment around you starts to form. Not about your effort, not about your intent, but about your range. And from their seat, it starts to feel like you're in the middle of everything, but not actually driving much. Like you carry the title, but not the judgment. And once that conclusion sets in, people stop looking to you for direction. They'll work around you, but never through you. And I understand when your success becomes the lens you lead through, the people around you adapt faster than you realize. Your teams, they'll shape what they share because they already know the lane the conversation will stay in. Your partners feel when engagement is tied to timing more than connection. And people start bringing you less, not to be guarded, but to stay aligned with the version of you they're used to. And you'll never lose influence loudly, but you'll lose it quietly when people start managing the interaction instead of having you participate in it. And when your leadership relies on access instead of understanding, your authority will shift. That person consistently provides the right answers, becomes the one people trust in the outcomes. And eventually, that stops being you. So if you ever want to know whether this is happening, don't just look at your results. Look at how the people around you actually interact with you, because you're never going to fix this by trying to change others. It starts with you running a diagnostic on your own leadership. So here are the 3 areas to examine. Let's start with how you show up, not how you intended to show up. This is how people actually experience you. So ask yourself this: are your people bringing you the full picture, or just a version they know will land cleanly with you? Does your meetings feel like real exploration, or do they feel like check-ins people already know how to get through? And pay attention to timing. Do people come to you early while direction is still forming, or only at the end when they need approvals or a signature? And notice this too: do your partners hear from you when the relationship matters, or mainly when the timing works best for you? Because when your presence narrows, people don't push back, they'll adapt. Now let's look at scarcity. Not time, not capacity. Scarcity in leadership shows up when doing more starts to feel like the only way to stay successful, when everything has to move, or it feels like momentum will disappear. So let me ask you something. Have you ever really stopped to ask yourself why you work this way? And I get it. You build success by taking on everything comes down. The results reinforce the habit. But pause for a second. Are you pushing this down to everyone because it truly should be a priority, or because it's simply the newest thing that landed on your desk? Now think about the direction. More work can feel like momentum, but a lot of the time, it's just pulls focus from what actually builds results. So ask yourself, is this really advancing my team, or is it distracting us from what actually wins? And then next, who does this actually really serve? Is this going to be building more capability across your team, or is it just another exercise that creates no value beyond the people who asked for it to be done in the first place? And finally, what about your influence? Do every one of your interactions with partners carry the same weight, even when those requests aren't the same value? So ask yourself this: will this new request strengthen the support you actually need when it matters? Or will the next ask just feel like more noise? Because when everything is urgent, nothing carries gravity. And when you really need support, it won't be there. And finally, let's talk about depth. Not your expertise, not doing everyone else's job. Depth is about whether you can shape direction before the work starts, or whether direction is already set by the time you're involved. If you want to protect influence, you have to get honest about where your depth actually matters. So my first question is, do you have the foundational understanding needed to actually run your business? Not again to do everybody's job, but to shape direction before you need to loop in someone else. Because the moment you don't understand it well enough to frame the work, you're giving up directional control. And once direction is set by someone else, you're no longer leading the outcome, even if your name is still on it. And the next question, can you clearly define what right looks like to you? Because if you can't define it, you're not delegating, you're just forwarding tasks. And the work might get done, but your standards, they never get enforced. And then here's the final check. Can you judge whether the solution actually fits without someone else walking you through it? If you need a breakdown just to have an opinion, you didn't delegate, you handed away your authority. And that's how depth erodes your influence quietly, one decision at a time. Because people don't respond to your capability. They respond to what your behavior trains them to expect. When your presence narrows, people adjust to what they bring you. When your scarcity creeps in, your team ends up carrying weight that pulls them from what the business actually needs them to do to win. And when your depth stays shallow, direction gets set without you, and so does your control. And all this comes from the patterns you teach people about where to place judgment. And once that shifts, getting it back will be one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Much harder than building the right one the first time. Every week I break down the real strategy behind top performance for wealth advisor leaders ready to operate the level they're built for. This is EliteVate. We cut through the fluff, no hype, no theory, just strategy, psychology, and execution. If this hits home, subscribe. You're not just watching and learning. You will become the model others follow.